So, how do you end an irreverent black surrealist comedy series in a way that satisfies the fans while also staying true to the core of what that show was always supposed to be about? And also, how do you end a retrospective series on that same irreverent black surrealist comedy series in a way that sufficiently analyzes the elements of the finale season while also providing the viewer with a broadened perspective on the series as a whole? Well, hopefully both of those questions will be adequately answered in this video. Season 4 of Atlanta premiered on September 4th, 2022, just 4 months after the Season 3 finale. This would be the shortest amount of time between season premieres in the show's run, which is kind of funny considering that the wait between Seasons 2 and 3 was the longest amount of time between seasons. The same way Season 2 served as a sort of Part 2 to Season 1, one can make the argument that Season 4 is the Part 2 to Season 3. Well, it's me. I'm the one making that argument. I mean, considering what Season 3 was, it would make sense that it would need a Season 4 to balance things out, you could say. Season 3 was a figurative and literal departure from the norms of Atlanta. The characters flew out to a different continent, and the writers experimented with a lot of different ideas and stories, many of which didn't even include the main cast of characters, nor the city of Atlanta at all. So Season 4, serving as the comforting return home to the relatively normal Atlanta backdrop, was the perfect way to set up the finale for these characters and the show. I've gone through each episode of each season of Atlanta so far in this retrospective series, and with every video and every season, I've determined a core element or theme that's prevalent throughout the season and focused specifically on that theme in the video. Season 1 was about what it's like being caught up in the struggle of Black American poverty. Season 2 was about the morally gray things that people often have to do to avoid falling back into that struggle once they've started to escape it. Season 3 was about
racism.
Oh, he said it right there.
Specifically focused on the concept of whiteness. But Season 4 is a little bit different. Where the previous seasons attempted to paint these grandiose pictures of these themes and concepts, Season 4 is more about the characters of Atlanta. It's less about these satirical messages and more about exploring Earn, Al, Van, and Darius, the main characters that as fans have come to know, love, and watch grow. It's about giving them their endings, their perfect send-offs. It's about answering previously unanswered questions and giving the viewers and the characters themselves the closure that we all desire. Season 4 is different from its predecessors, so for that reason, I'm going to analyze it differently than I did those other seasons. Instead of going through each episode from beginning to end in order to extrapolate the necessary info about each character and theme, I'm going to go character by character and comb through each episode to tell their story and analyze their endings without worrying about each individual episode. Does that make sense? No? Well, how about I just start analyzing Earn's ending and hopefully you'll get what I'm trying to do from there. Earn is the main character of Atlanta. That's very obvious, but his story of struggle, uncertainty, failure, and suffering from Season 1 is what gripped and captivated many fans of the show from the start. Earn, like many of us at some point in our lives, was a loser. He was a man with great potential who seemed to fail at every turn no matter how badly he wanted to succeed. But despite those constant failures, Earn never stopped trying to achieve his dreams, and he did what he felt he had to do to claw and scrape his way out of the struggle and make something of himself. Did he hurt a lot of people along the way? Yes. Did he make many mistakes that could have and maybe even should have gotten him killed? Also yes. But did it all work out in the end? Well, I think you know the answer to that. Earn has been a successful manager since the first episode of Season 3. There were many episodes in Seasons 1 and 2 that showed Earn stumbling his way through learning how to be a manager in the very cutthroat music industry. But in Seasons 3 and 4, Earn is shown confidently running shit and living a very pampered and high-end life. The Season 4 episode Born to Die is actually one of the rare times in the second half of the series that Earn doesn't seem in complete control of his job. While in a group meeting for the managing company he's contracted with, Earn suggests that he can sign the beloved yet very mysterious R&B legend D'Angelo to their label. After the room of doubters dismisses Earn's claims, he goes on a very weird journey that mostly just consists of him waiting in a large white room for a very long time until he's finally granted access to what he believes to be D'Angelo's hideout, only for it to be a D'Angelo impersonator who really likes fried chicken sandwiches. I didn't read much into this episode as having much of a deep meaning, but I did find this line from the fake D'Angelo pretty interesting.
Since you were 8, You always had a dream where you were swimming, and below are hands grasping to reach you. You struggle to keep them from pulling you under. You fight to stay free. Why are you so certain the hands intend to harm you?
What's interesting about this episode is that it harkens back to a moment from the very first episode where Earn explains the very same dream about hands pulling him under to Vanessa.
I had a weird dream. I was swimming in this pool, but it was like the ocean, and I was swimming through the seaweed, but it wasn't seaweed, it's like hands. And I was swimming with this girl, and she was saying if the hands grab you, they pull you down and drown you, so swim above them.
That's deep.
It's also very reminiscent of the season 3 opening vignette of White Man Earn on the boat talking about the black ghosts of what I guess is supposed to be Lake Lanier. There's a lot of imagery and subtext in Atlanta about being dragged down with others, and it's mostly seen as a negative in almost every other instance of the series. But this is the first time that it's actually considered a possibly positive thing.
So now you are a protector.
La 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 la.
Does that detail make this whole D'Angelo story plot mean anything in regards to the overall message of Atlanta? That I can't say, but I can say that Earn is no longer being pulled down by anything or anyone in season 4. But it's also clear that something else is still wrong with Earn. He has his dream job, but your job/career is only a part of who you are. Who is Earn when he's not Paperboy's manager? What does Earn want now that he's financially stable? What is Earn still missing that would make him whole? The answer is more tangible than it might seem. Plain and simple, he wants Van. He wants to be a family with Van and Lottie. Not just two parents who are raising a kid, but a real family. Throughout the series, Earn and Van's relationship has been the very definition of it's complicated. Since the start of the show, first they were sleeping together, but not really together. Then they get back together after a road trip, only to then break up after their next road trip. Then they hated each other, then they are abandoning their daughter to hook up in Europe. Then they end up cool again, but not really together. Anyway, by the start of season 4, Van and Earn are clearly in a good co-parenting, but it's probably still f***ing situationship. But for whatever reason, they're not truly an official couple. In the first episode of season 4, titled The Most Atlanta, we see them spend a day at a local Atlanta strip mall, and while they're there, they keep running into their various exes from back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I mean from way back in the day.
I haven't seen you since the Kid Ink concert.
Yeah, it's been a while, huh?
Kid Ink?
He worked at this AT&T when he took me to that concert. He's still here.
I feel like this is partly a joke about how when you leave your hometown and come back, it always seems like the people you left are stuck doing the same shit that they've been doing for years. And it also feels like a joke about how it's only when you start a new relationship that all your old exes want to come out of the woodwork and act like everything is all cool. And it could also very much be a very specific Atlanta joke about how easy it is to get lost in that specific strip mall, but that one's a little over my head. The name of the episode being called The Most Atlanta kind of hints at this as well. But Van and Earn eventually find a way out of this toxic time loop of old exes and come out just fine. The next episode, though, is proof that Earn is not just fine. The second episode in season 4 is called The Homeliest Little Horse, and it's the first Earn-focused episode in a pretty long time. I'm talking since the season 2 finale in 2018 long. But this episode is very important because this is the episode where we finally get answers to what the hell happened to Earn at Princeton. Well, would you look at that? Is this Atlanta actually tying up loose ends and giving the viewers satisfying payoffs for the plot threads it started earlier in the series?
Hey, look at us.
Look at us, huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
I'm kind of serious when I say that watching Atlanta back when it was first airing, I just started to assume that we would never get answers to the questions like why Earn left Princeton, so this episode was a very exciting thing to see for the first time. Now, if we just could have gotten the answer to where Earn used to go to the bathroom when he was living in that storage room from season 1, that would be great. But first things first, let's talk about this amazing episode. I mentioned in my season 1 video that one of Earn's strongest personality attributes is his pettiness. The man truly loves getting his get back, and the more rich and powerful he became, it seems like the more sick, twisted, and truly jaw-dropping his revenge became. The episode is broken down into 2 points in time: a time where Earn is in therapy due to his growing health concerns, and a time shortly after that where Earn has plotted his ridiculously intricate revenge plot on a Karen TSA worker, and I mean Karen as the funny slur, not as her actual name. Earn's hatred for this Karen TSA worker stems from a run-in at the airport where the woman basically racially profiled him and did everything in her power to stop him from taking a flight to LA with Van and Lottie.
I got a child here. Here are the passes for Sesame Place. Please let us in. This lady laughs in my fucking face.
Earn decides to take his revenge out on the TSA worker, but not by reporting her to her superiors or tweeting out this injustice to social media. No. He does this by doing his research on her personal life, finding out that she's an aspiring author of children's books, and then crafting the most elaborately sinister and honestly life-ruining prank on this woman. Earn enlists the help of several actors to play different roles in this farce. Publishing agents, front desk workers, hell, even kids to be audience members, and of course I can't forget my favorite addition of the group.
Rosenbaum, 10:30, man. Oh, thank you.
God damn, man. Seeing Tracy randomly pop up in this woman's story was so fucking funny. But it also probably should have been the first sign that something was off.
Yeah, man. Hey, you better watch your back. You're next.
Nah, man, you fucking with me, man. What you gonna do to me, man? You know me. Told you watch out for your cousin. He's sick, man. Yeah. I'll holler at you, boy.
But honestly, like I said, I was just happy to see Tracy back in the show. Wish he could have been in more episodes, though. During the entire process of Earn's prank on this woman, she convinces herself to quit her job as a TSA agent despite being low on money to the point where she can't even pay her own rent. But she does this just so she can fully follow her dreams of being a published author. It's funny because this woman's story and what she's willing to do for her dreams kind of mirrors Earn's story from season 1, except, Earn's dream didn't end up being a big joke. Everything is set up like the woman is going to have her big break, reading her book in front of some kids in a library with the whole thing being filmed. But the kids end up hating her book, so they just roast her bitch ass and storm out of the reading.
I don't like this story.
It worked like a charm. The horses were saved. Alas.
This obviously leaves the woman devastated and heartbroken, while Earn and all the other participants on the prank laugh from the shadows. This is the kind of revenge that can be hilarious to watch until you realize just how disturbed and twisted a mind would have to be to even think of it, let alone fully execute it. Even Al and Darius look concerned when Earn tells them the whole plan.
So you did all this to hurt one lady? Okay. Hey, look, I'm gonna go to that Def Jam 3 machine because this nigga is tripping.
Ow.
And I think here's a good time to talk about Earn's therapy sessions. I really love these scenes. As I said, Atlanta had kind of gotten away from doing deep dives on Earn and started to focus more heavily on other characters. So it was nice to see them finally get back to it in this episode and finally peel back some of those layers of trauma that Earn had been keeping wrapped up. Men are unfortunately notorious for keeping their emotions hidden and repressed. Insert things men will do before going to therapy meme. And I've already talked about the things Al has repressed and hidden from others to maintain his strong and unbothered public persona in other videos. But it was really dope to see Earn just unpack everything in this episode. We finally learn what happened to him in Princeton, and we even get some very shocking revelations about Earn being abused by a family member as a child.
I get this job interview, and I'm really excited about it. I'm at the computer lab, and my crush comes in. And she asked me if I want to go to this party in Philly with her. She wants me to go. And I'm like, cool. Sasha is a couple of stalls down. She hears this and offers to take my suit, stash it in her room. I come back, I text her to get the suit, no response. So I'm texting her again. I'm like, hey, where's the suit? I really need the suit. And she just writes back, sorry, not around. I went in there with my master key and I got my suit and I left. Big mistake. As an RA, they make you feel like you have some sort of agency, but then you turn around and then all of a sudden you're OJ.
What else did you feel?
Hurt,
Why?
I guess.
Why?
Because we're supposed to be friends.
You were hurt by someone you trusted.
Yeah.
Like the family member who abused you?
Yeah.
The mistrust of therapy, childhood abuse, especially by family members, and repression of all of these very volatile emotions are unfortunately a very prevalent thing within Black families. It's something that has been known about for ages, but is getting talked about and discussed much more in pop culture nowadays, and I think that's incredibly important. I also love Donald Glover's performance in this episode. The scene where the therapist gradually pushes him to his breaking point is mesmerizing and heartbreaking. In episode 4, titled Light Skinned It, we get a very funny look into the generation of the Marks family before Earn and Al. Basically, their parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They're all 50, 60, 70-year-olds still arguing and bickering over the same shit they probably were in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They're not the most dysfunctional family ever, but they definitely still have a lot of unresolved family issues.
Y'all hate me because I'm light-skinned.
For better or for worse, family is important. A lot of people would consider family the most important thing. So it's always sad to see a broken family, no matter to what extent that break is. It's also common for younger generations to base their views on family off of what the older generation shows them. I think Earn and Al, after growing up in their slightly dysfunctional and bickering family, have decided that it's not what they want. Al doesn't seem to want a family at all, but Earn wants a tight-knit family that doesn't have the same drama. But I do feel like it's important to mention before I finish discussing episode 4, no work of fiction and no literary character has reminded me of my own father more than Earn's dad in this episode. I mean, this is just my dad on TV. If you ever wanted to know what Father Review or Papa Chill looked and acted like,
but I just got asked, just bring the goddamn bread.
This is it. It's Earn's dad in this episode. But anyway, Earn's therapy sessions illuminate that much of his stress really comes from the anxiety about wanting to move to LA with Van. And as I said before, Earn has finally realized that he loves Van and he wants to be a real family with her and Lottie. This job offer in LA is now the make or break moment for their relationship. And Earn has been, understandably, struggling to come up with a good way to ask her to move to LA with him. This is where episode 7, titled The Snipe Hunt, comes in. This episode is all about Earn, Van, and Lottie going on a nice family camping trip, and it's kinda it. Yeah. This episode's really boring.
But it was boring, Huey.
I mean, I'd say the first 90% of this episode isn't even worth discussing, because nothing of importance really happens at all. It's just a nice, tranquil, normal camping trip with a nice, normal family. But despite the boring first 90%, I still really love this episode, and it's all because of the ending. I've said in these retrospective videos before that I'm not really into the whole will they or won't they toxic couple trope in stories, but I gotta say that watching Earn finally tell Van just how much he loves her and just how much he needs her, not just as Lottie's mother, but how much he selfishly wants and needs to be with her, and Van accepting his love after all the times that she had tried to make it work with him back in the day, it's just great to see, man.
I just want to do this with you. Will you go to LA with me? So we can be a family.
Okay.
Okay.
Earn pretty much got everything he set out to get in the beginning of the show. He got the job, the respect, the money, the woman, the family, and the life that he so desperately wanted. And honestly, it's kind of a surprisingly happy ending for Earn, Van, and Lottie, considering how dark and cynical of a show Atlanta had been up to this point. And speaking of Van, I guess I might as well go over her ending next, since she's so tightly connected to Earn. And considering how bad some of you went in on me for talking down on Van in my season 3 video, I should probably tread lightly this time, huh?
Oh, yeah. I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
Nah, f that. I'm gonna tell it how I see it, and if you disagree with me, hopefully we can respectfully discuss it in the comments. Deal? Deal. So yeah, I hated the season 3 finale about Van's wild new life in Paris. And I gotta be honest, I'm not really sure where the disconnect between myself and many of the commenters on that video is stemming from. Even after reading all of them and responding with more detailed explanations of my own views on the matter, I still don't get what I'm not seeing that you're seeing. Van was always a great character in seasons 1 and 2, and I've said as much in my videos about those seasons. She was the black female voice and representation that a surrealist black satire like Atlanta desperately needed. Was she a perfect or pure person? No, not at all, but that's not how she should have been portrayed anyway. She made mistakes and she had some bad qualities, but those negative traits only helped to make her feel more realistic and likable. It wasn't until season 3 where she has her mental breakdown that I started to dislike the character at all. And not even for having a mental breakdown, because raising a child as a single black woman in America is indescribably difficult, I'm sure. And it's a wonder more black women don't go completely crazy. But one thing I can't sympathize with is abandoning your child. And that's what Van did in season 3. She abandoned Lottie to live a new life in another country. That's what happened. It's in the show. You can't really dispute that. Now, I know morality is not objective or universal, but I think every rational person can agree that abandoning your child is not a very cool thing to do, regardless of the reason. And my feelings about Van needing to raise her daughter have nothing to do with her gender either, as some people suggested I was implying. If Earn had done what Van did and tried to stay in Europe after the tour ended and cut Lottie out of his life, I would call that a deadbeat too. Earn is far from a perfect parent in the series, and I've said as much in previous videos, but Van in season 3 is way worse. Okay, now that that's been explained, I can say that, yeah, I did not have much expectations for Van when it came to season 4. I was fully expecting the writers to continue to fumble her character after the disaster that was her depiction in season 3. But you know what? I gotta give the writers a lot of credit because they actually made me like Van again in this season. She has her shared episode with Earn in the season opener that was a nice little reintroduction to the character, but her obligatory Van episode of this season, episode 5 called Work Ethic, well, it's pretty great. A big issue Van had in season 3 and technically throughout the series was that she lacked identity. So much of who she was tied to other people. She was Earn's girlfriend, she was Earn's baby mama, she was Lottie's mother. She was a teacher, but then she lost that job and was in an endless limbo ever since. So it was dope to see that Van was attempting to start a career in acting in this episode. Basically, the plot is that Van and Lottie go to a casting call for Van to be an extra on a sitcom created by none other than Mr. Chocolate. Who is Mr. Chocolate, you might ask? Well, Mr. Chocolate is supposed to represent Winston Jerome. I mean, Tyler Perry. Anyone who's watched my Boondocks videos knows that I've already covered Tyler Perry as a controversial black figure before, but I think it's worth getting into again for the sake of this video. Tyler Perry is many things. He's a writer, actor, director, producer, owner. You name it, Tyler Perry has probably done it and made millions doing it. There was a stretch of time where, for better or for worse, he was legitimately the face of black comedy and even black film as a whole. And as this episode points out, he's also responsible for many black jobs on the sets of films, and as well as the giant production houses and studios that he owns and shoots his projects on.
Say what you want about Mr. Chocolate, but he's done a lot for the community.
Yep.
I'm rooting for everybody black.
Even OJ. Even OJ?
Even OJ.
The big question with Tyler Perry has always been, does his art help or hurt black people as a whole? Because yes, his art employs and depicts black Americans, but his art is also really bad most of the time, so it often depicts black people in a very poor light.
Why didn't you protect me? Isn't that what mothers are supposed to do?
This cartoon's good as hell.
But this video isn't about deciphering the pros and cons of Tyler Perry's legacy. This episode is about Van and Lottie trying to escape Mr. Chocolate's clutches. Van gets cast for a small role on one of Mr. Chocolate's sitcoms, and she takes Lottie with her so that Lottie can see Van doing something that she really enjoys. But after Lottie is discovered by Mr. Chocolate, he decides to cast her in pretty much everything. Van is hesitant to let this happen, but ultimately she decides that if it's what Lottie wants, then it's okay with her. But Van quickly changes her mind about this when Lottie starts getting sent all over the place and no one can tell her where she is. Van goes on a wild goose chase looking everywhere for Lottie on Mr. Chocolate's giant compound, all the while running into Black Tyler Perry cliché after Black Tyler Perry cliché until she finally confronts Mr. Chocolate in his office. And I just gotta say, with this episode and the Teddy Perkins episode from season 2, Atlanta is now 2 for 2 for great episodes when Donald Glover wears some ridiculous disguise. Also, this happens.
I'm fine. Grits don't work on me. I've developed a tolerance over the years.
Violent assaults by Grits aside, I think this episode has 2 major messages. One is just how quickly child stars can be swept away in the glitz and glamour of Hollywood until they become used and unwanted has-beens before they can even understand what's happening. But I think the more important message is about motherhood and what it means to be a parent. I've already given my view on Van as a parent after season 3, but I think this episode serves as her redemption for that debacle. Van is shown caring about Lottie's safety at every moment in this episode. She's clearly willing to do whatever it takes to get her daughter back after she loses her in Chocolate Land. God, that sounds so ridiculous. But a very crucial detail about this is that Van was there to further her own career. But when Lottie became the star Mr. Chocolate was looking for, she wasn't bitter about it at all. And she accepted that she needed to compromise her own dreams for the sake of what her child wanted. That's often one of the hardest things for a parent to learn, sacrificing their own happiness for the sake of their children's. And seeing Van do that in this episode after doing the complete opposite in season 3 was really cool to see. I also love this woman's line about the topic as well.
Whoever doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a child won't enter it. And I always thought that meant whoever is not open to the joys of a child, like their own child, is not really open to true happiness.
But when it comes to what leads Van to accepting Earn's love and their shared ending, it could be that what Mr. Chocolate says here about her in his office is a big part of it.
You're a single mother who can't afford to feed your daughter. Phaedra's your hip girlfriend. You have a formerly incarcerated light-skinned love interest. You have a dark-skinned baby daddy.
He's brown-skinned.
Face it, Vanessa.
You're a cook with chocolate woman.
And as much as Van may not want to admit it, Mr. Chocolate has a point about her being a stereotype. Nobody wants to be a single parent. At least nobody in their right mind would want to be a single parent. Earn isn't an absent father, but Earn and Van being a true family would definitely make life as a parent much easier and more enjoyable for Lottie as well. I'm not saying that Mr. Chocolate's speech to Van is the only reason that she says yes to Earn in the end, but I do think it was a factor. And with that, we have Earn and Van's perfect, happy little ending. That's great and all, but this show's supposed to be about a rapper trying to make it in the music industry, so what exactly is Paperboy's ending? Well, Al's journey in season 4 is all about one very important realization. This rap is not for the old, and Al is getting older and older every day. The impetus of this epiphany is in the season opener when Al finds out that one of his favorite rappers, Blue Blood, recently passed away.
The radio just said Blue Blood died.
Damn. Really?
Yeah. I don't know, man. And they said he'd been dead for like 3 months.
Being a big fan, after hearing that he passed, Al starts listening to more of his music, and he slowly starts to realize that there's some sort of hidden message in his lyrics. This hidden message turns out to be a scavenger hunt to find the location of his funeral.
Weed man hit me up, new geraniums. A whole locker full of chips, gotta break them in. New chips, gotta break them in.
And after running all over Atlanta finding clue after clue, Al finally makes it to the funeral, and it's here where he has a conversation with Blue Blood's widow. She speaks with Al about the fact that she thought and wished that more people would have come, and the fact that Alfred was one of the only ones to show up proves how much people had stopped caring about Blue Blood in the later years. The music industry in general has always been a very fickle, we love you today and we can't remember your name tomorrow type of space, but rap and hip-hop especially has always had a very cannibalistic nature to it when it comes to its stars. Unless you're one of the all-time greats, you should probably not expect your career in rap to last very long. In order to stay successful, rappers have always needed to be able to pivot into other business ventures to stay relevant and continue to make money after people stop caring about their music. Will Smith, 50 Cent, Snoop, Ludacris, These are just some of the well-known rappers who, at this point in their lives, are most known for other things besides rap. After seeing how Blue Blood went out, this sparks something in Al's mind that he doesn't want to go out the same way. And also, as a quick side note, I gotta say, RIP to the god MF Doom. Blue Blood is clearly supposed to be an homage to the deceased hip-hop icon who unfortunately passed shortly before the season aired, and whoever in the Atlanta writing room had the idea to have Earl Sweatshirt be the rapping voice of Blue Blood? Genius fucking idea right there. The story arc for Al continues in episode 3, called Born to Die. Al is still riding high in his career, selling out arenas, performing at bar mitzvahs, and, typical other rappers. But it's when he gets propositioned to mentor a young Jewish boy who also wants to make music that he meets a fellow rapper of his generation in the studio called Bunk. After hearing the groundbreaking new sound that these young white boys are making,
I'm Ricky. Hey. I'm Rocky. I'm Tiki.
So you want to hang out with these little kids?
I'm talking.
You want converse in Studio 3?
Bunk invites Paperboy to a meeting with him and a few other rappers about how to really make money nowadays in rap. And it's at this meeting that Bunk and his associates break down the YWA system.
Everybody in here can rap their asses off. But if rapping meant you made money, then Cassidy would be a fucking billionaire. Memorize this. Go to sleep dreaming about this.
What's the YWA, man?
Young, white, avatar.
It's no secret that white rappers have traditionally had a hard time garnering acceptance within the culture of hip-hop. If you were white, you used to basically have to be an Eminem level rapper to get any kind of respect. And shit, even Eminem isn't respected in every circle of hip-hop. But over the last decade or so, there's definitely been an uptick in the amount of successful white rappers and hip-hop artists, most likely due to how mainstream and globally popular rap and hip-hop has become in that span of time. The audience of a hip-hop crowd doesn't look the same way it did 10, 15, 20 years ago. There are a lot more young white people listening to rap than ever before, and because of this, there are a lot more young white people rapping. The sound of hip-hop and what fans are looking to get out of rap has changed as well. Being the best rapper nowadays doesn't have nearly as much to do with lyricism as it did back in the day. All of the rappity rap men still have places in the culture and are still able to make a living off of their music, but most of the biggest rappers in the world aren't the most lyrical. They're the ones who make the catchiest music that also appeals to the widest audience. Widest, not whitest there, but they kind of go hand in hand. So this episode is giving rappers a guide on latching themselves onto these new up-and-coming white rappers in hopes of prolonging their relevance and their careers in a new era. Paperboy is reluctant to listen at first, but once he's reminded of Blue Blood and how he went out with virtually no one caring about him, he realizes that Bunk and his associates are right. So he eventually finds his own young white avatar to latch onto. And I believe this kid is a reference to the real-life viral yodel kid, Mason Ramsey.
She do me, she do you, she's got that kind of loving, lot of love to hear when she comes to sweet dad.
Every scene of this kid is just so funny to me. But at first, the whole YWA thing goes great for Al, to the point where he ends up at the Grammys for the Yodel Kid's new song. The only problem is that the Yodel Kid kind of dies before he can even accept his award.
Hey, you heard from Yodel Kid, man? Because I've been calling his ass all day. You know where he at?
Oh, yeah. He's dead.
Tough break, nigga.
But hey, at least Al got his young white avatar money before his young white avatar died. R.I.P. to the god Yodel Kid. Oh yeah, R.I.P. to the god Clark County too, I guess. Sorry, just sorting out loose ends from other videos while I can. The writers randomly threw the news of Clark County's death in the season 3 episode, so I'm just randomly acknowledging it in this video. The cycle continues. Anyway, the next important Al episode is one that I haven't talked about yet, and it's called Crank That Killer. Now, this whole episode might be another inside Atlanta joke that I don't fully understand, but I will say that the parts of this episode that I do understand are really funny. The basic plot is that some very strange psycho is killing anyone who has ever posted a Crank That Soulja Boy dance video from back in the day. The dance videos that people did before TikTok where they would just crank that Soulja Boy and, tell you how to do it. Wait, Did Soulja Boy invent TikTok dances too?
I introduced y'all to the internet. I was the first artist to work with the Migos. I'm the reason why it's Apple Music and Spotify. I'm the reason there's Lil Pumps. I'm the first rapper to come out with a video game. I discovered Chief Keef. Rooster Keef used to sleep on my couch. I was the first artist on YouTube. Quavo met Travis Scott at my house. Why you think you got an Instagram? That's me.
Never mind. This isn't the video for that. Anyway, it turns out that Al was one of the people who got swept up in this craze, and when Al finds out about the killer, he begins to fear for his life. Oh yeah, and speaking of Big Draco, he's actually in this episode. This line about a safe farm is pretty funny, but it'll also be very important later in the season.
If I was you, I'd be on the way to my safe farm right now.
Safe farm? What the hell is safe farm?
A farm that's safe. If you don't got a safe farm, you good as dead. You know, like a good nigga, safe farm is there.
But for now, we unfortunately have to see Paperboy stuck in another life or death situation where he has to either run or fight for his survival. He's really been through a lot in this show, huh? But it's also in this episode that we get one of my favorite setups and payoffs for a joke in the entire series.
Yo, my life's like a movie, my eyes are like a Uzi, jacuzzi. Get the fuck out of the way!
My words can't really do this whole thing justice. I just think it's genuinely one of the funniest jokes in the show, and it's like this that made me love the show in the first place. But back to Al. He manages to survive this crazy attack and seems to finally realize that he doesn't really need to be in the public eye anymore after this. He's finally done with all the danger and paranoia of the rap game, and based on the penultimate episode of the series titled Andrew Wyeth, Alfred's World, he decides to do something about it. Remember when I mentioned Soulja Boy's safe farm? Well, looks like Al took that advice to heart, and he ends up buying his own bit of farmland on the outskirts of the city. I'll be honest, similar to the snipe hunt episode, this one is a pretty boring and lackluster episode. Easily one of my least favorites in the series, but also like the snipe hunt episode, I really love the ending for what it implies for Alfred's character. The basic plot is that after purchasing this farmland, Al goes through the normal troubles that most farmhands deal with, broken machinery and animals ruining their crops. To me, the boars in this episode represent Al's demons of all the years of drug dealing and being in the music industry. He has to fully kill them to rid himself of their influence on him. As I just said, the episode is pretty uneventful overall. It's just another, oh, here goes Al, getting himself in terrible situations again, type of thing. But the kind of boring malaise of it all feels like it was the point. Al has lived a crazy and chaotic life up to this point. Growing up as a poor black kid in Atlanta, then becoming a drug dealer, then a rapper, in and out of jail, always getting chased, shot at, harassed. Everything he does is in the public eye, and he's judged by both friends and strangers for it. When someone goes through as much strife and turmoil as Al has, a lot of times they just want a place where they can relax and get away from their trauma. This episode is the end of the main story of Atlanta. A rapper went from rags to riches, and after all of his hard work and suffering, he gets to live out the rest of his days in peace and relative tranquility for as long as he chooses, free to sit back and reflect on his accomplishments and his hardships. Just like Earn and Van, Al also gets the happy ending that many people in his line of work unfortunately are never granted. Now, there's only one main character left, but before we get into Darius' character, I do want to take a quick reprieve from the main characters to talk about an episode that none of them are actually in. Episode 8 of Season 4 is called The Goof Who Sat by the Door, and it's one of the most surreal, eye-opening, and hilarious episodes in the entire show. And the episode is all about Goofy? Specifically, it's about the 1995 Disney classic, A Goofy Movie. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not sure that I've ever actually watched the original A Goofy Movie. It wasn't exactly before my time, but let's just say I was not at an age to really understand anything that was happening around me at that time. I do remember watching the sequel called An Extremely Goofy Movie when I was a kid, but even that I only have very vague recollections of. I know some of the iconic elements of the movie like Tevin Campbell and Powerline and all that good shit, but I say all of that to say, even as a black man born in the 90s, I had no idea that A Goofy Movie was considered a black movie.
Hey, come on, you know Goofy's People just laughed, man. We just thought that was so funny.
I mean, after watching this episode, it makes sense, but like I said, I just never actually watched it enough to know. But this episode is about much more than just a lovably stupid dog and his son. This episode is about a very convincing mockumentary about a fictional director and visionary behind the creation of a Goofy movie named Thomas Washington. The mockumentary chronicles Thomas's rise from poverty and racial oppression into the highest level of success in entertainment when he's mistakenly appointed as the CEO of Disney, but then it also shows his fall from the top and his descent into madness caused by the stress of his position that ends in his mysterious and tragic death. Many fans of Atlanta have speculated that Thomas Washington is supposed to represent Donald Glover, and is a sort of mirror into his childhood, rise to fame and prominence, and the things that he has struggled with as he's found more and more success in Hollywood. From the black kids that he grew up around calling him white because he was too nerdy, to overcompensating for his blackness being questioned by trying to be the ultimate pro-black figure once he got famous, there are definitely certain parallels that you can draw between Thomas and Donald. I'm mostly just impressed by how realistic and convincing the mockumentary was in the first half. I mean, it legitimately had me questioning if this was some major moment in history when Disney actually had a black CEO that I just knew nothing about. That is, until this scene happens.
Now, Tom went out on assignment, researched, hung out, went to a couple black cookouts, said the wrong thing, got his ass beat, but now, he's more aware.
But the episode as a whole is still amazingly well done, and it's one of Atlanta's best examples of that weird surrealist anthology that the writers love to do. It's probably my favorite anthology episode of the whole series, and it gave me a lot of hope that whatever Donald Glover and the rest of the creatives behind Atlanta did after Atlanta ended, it would still be as dope as Atlanta was. Hintity hint hint. But now that that episode is out of the way, we can finally talk about Darius. Have you ever thought about what Darius even is? I know that actually sounds like something Darius would say, but I'm serious. In terms of the roles that each character has in the show, what is the point of Darius? For instance, Earn is the main character. Alfred, or Paperboy, is both Earn's cousin and the artist that he manages. His life has multiple very deep and non-severable connections with Al's. Van is Earn's on-again, off-again girlfriend and the mother of his child. She too has multiple deep and non-severable connections to Earn. So what is Darius's connection to Earn, the main character of the show? Well, he's Earn's cousin's close friend and roommate. That's about it. His connection to Earn is very secondary. The entire story of Atlanta could be told without Darius there for any of it, and it would still, for the most part, play out the same. For the sake of the story, Darius doesn't need to be here, but yet... Oh yeah, and Darius is here too. And oh look, Darius is here too. Oh look, Darius is here too. Oh look, Darius is here too.
Darius is here too.
Whether it's Earn going through his crisis at the end of season 2, Van at the start of her crisis at the start of season 3, and, I mean, he's always around Alfred for most of the show, so Darius is always there as a casual observer, or as a conduit of sagely and sometimes questionable advice. Over the 4-season run of Atlanta, we come to learn so much about Earn, Al, and Van, but almost nothing about Darius. I mean, other than him being a Nigerian pothead who can't reproduce, what else do we really know about him? But if you ask me what I think Darius is supposed to represent in Atlanta, I would say that Darius is you. Darius is me. Darius is all of the black people who sit down on their couches or lay down on their beds at night and decide to escape the harshness of their reality by getting lost in a half an hour of Atlanta before going to bed and waking up to that same cold world. Darius is a black American, but he was raised by Nigerian parents. He has direct ties to both American black culture and African black culture. He's a man in his late 20s to mid 30s, so he's right in the middle of the older generation and the newer generation. He's a drug dealer from the hood of Atlanta, but he also wears weird clothes and dyes his hair, paints his nails, and listens to speed metal. He's clearly a very well-spoken and intelligent man, but he's also very bizarre and kind of an airhead.
It ain't that big of a deal. We just knocked this out. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
I don't want to kiss you.
But I know you're not gay, bro.
That's not the point, okay?
I don't want to kiss my friend for shoes.
So what, you want to kiss a stranger? I don't understand what this
I don't want to
is.
kiss anybody, Darius.
The other characters experience their fair share of crazy shit throughout the show, but it's Darius who gets the entire storylines that cover gentrification, like with the Nujabes episode, racism at the gun range in the Black Bieber episode, microaggressions and cancel culture in the Old Man in the Tree episode, whatever the f you would call what he went through with Teddy Perkins in that episode, and even the paraplegic woman in the season 4 opener who relentlessly chases him throughout the city because she thinks he stole from a store. Actually, that woman was based on a real viral video of a similar white woman and a rascal trying to do the same thing. I've seen a bunch of videos of white people literally risking their lives to stop black people from breaking the most minor of laws, and it always amazes me because are these selfless acts of street justice racist? Most likely yes, but they're also very funny and just straight up baffling as to what makes them want to do this. But throughout all of these crazy experiences, Darius is often just a bewildered observer, not sure how to react in the moment. And when the potentially traumatizing moment is over, he's forced to just keep it moving and act like nothing happened. Just another day of being black in America. Episode 10 is titled It Was All a Dream, and it's where we finally get some goddamn Darius lore, and some answers to figuring out who Darius really is. And all of this legitimately could not have come at any later point in the show because this is the very fitting series finale of Atlanta. The episode follows Darius as he's on one of his many solo adventures. Today's solo adventure is taking a trip to the sensory deprivation tank for his weekly session. A weekly event where he escapes his reality by numbing his senses and immersing himself into another world. That sounds familiar. Anyway, on his way there, he stops by a pharmacy and he has a conversation with an interesting woman in line. And any 90s kid who grew up on TV in their house that played cartoons will most likely recognize this woman's voice as the motherfucking voice acting goat, Cree Summer. If I were to list off all of her voiceover credits right now, this video would literally be twice as long as it already is. Hell, she even voiced one of the kids on the cereal commercial from episode 7 of Atlanta. Cree Summer reminds us of our childhood. Hearing her voice takes us back to a simpler time, or maybe even a worse time, but either way, it's a voice that reminds us of our beginnings. And I think she was very purposefully cast in this role, and I think this conversation is at the start of Darius' story for that very reason.
I think I was trained for a long time to look at this world like a battle. And in some ways it is. But, I'm a part of this world too, this big thing, and I'm allowed to dance in it how I want to. As a matter of fact, I demand that I do.
Darius goes on to have a chance encounter with a woman from his past named London. This whole 3 to 5 minute sequence with London and Darius feels like a super condensed version of what an entire episode of Atlanta usually consists of. Some random chance encounter initially starts out fine, then there's some good little jokes, then it starts to get serious or dire out of nowhere. Everything looks like it's gonna go bad, but then it miraculously doesn't go bad. But then someone does something completely wild and unexpected that pushes everything to 100, only to ultimately end with a joke. It's not a perfect formula that goes to every episode, but I think it applies to a good number of them. I think this scene was made to give the fans just one last taste of Atlanta's comedy style before shit inevitably gets pretty sad. But story-wise, this whole scenario with London turns out to be an hallucination from the sensory deprivation chamber. And this starts a seemingly never-ending cycle of Darius experiencing something weird or crazy, and then finding out it was all a dream when he suddenly wakes back up in the chamber.
How long was I asleep? I don't know, about 30 minutes? Maybe 35?
Wait, what?
30 minutes?
I feel like these hallucinations represent the feeling of getting lost in your escape and losing touch with reality. Shows like Atlanta are an escape for reality, but if you indulge in that escape too often, you can become consumed by that fake reality and you'll end up suffering in the real world. But the most tragic hallucination is when Darius returns to what appears to be his childhood home or his deceased brother's old home. And at first, it's not clear that Darius' brother is dead. At first, it just looks like he's sick and that he hasn't seen Darius in a while. But as their conversation goes on, we eventually learn the truth. Darius' brother is dead, and it seems like his mother and father might be gone as well.
Miss you, man. How's Mom? What about Dad?
Darius is all alone. He lost his family either due to illness or some other unexplained means. This scene really broke my heart the first time I watched it, because I, like many other fans of Atlanta, had grown to really like Darius, and to find out that this was the type of pain and baggage that he was carrying around the whole show, well, I guess it just goes to show that you never really know what the next man is going through. It's important to mention, too, that while Darius was going through all of these sensory deprivation shenanigans, the rest of the Atlanta crew were out at a new Black-owned sushi fusion restaurant, and as much as they wanted to support Black-owned business, the issue was that, for one, the food was not very good, and two, there just happened to be a Popeyes right across the street.
It's salty, man. But not salty enough.
Eventually, Earn, Al, and Van can't take the temptation anymore and attempt to leave the Black sushi spot, but right as they're about to go, the owner and head chef of the restaurant comes out to stop them. Now, this whole monologue and speech from the restaurant owner about Black people being their own worst enemies and never trusting and supporting one another when they try to break the mold and do something new and positive because too often we fall back to the same destructive and poisonous shit that we've been fed our whole lives is amazing. And any analysis that I do cannot do this scene justice. You just have to hear it for yourself.
This entire dinner, you have been staring across the street at a modern-day coon chicken served to you by an Aunt Jemima who lies to you repeatedly, telling you it is her recipe and that she is benefiting from it. It is not her recipe. You know who owns that recipe? An Italian man and his family, none of which have married Black. I heard some of them even moved from New Orleans to New Jersey. New Jersey.
But just when things look to be getting dire for Earn, Al, and Van, here comes Darius with a pink Maserati and a fistful of steel to save the day. Where did Darius get a pink Maserati? How did he know his friends were in danger and needed his help? Why did he stop at Popeyes before he came to the rescue? All of these questions are valid, but in the end, none of these questions are really important, and none of these questions change the result of what happened. There's a lot of things in this world that you, I, and no one else will ever understand or be able to change, and we can dwell on those things all we want, but questioning them without action means nothing. I might be reading too far into this, but that's what I took from this ending. The Black struggle is real, and unfortunately, it goes on. It's not going to end in a day, and it may not end in our lifetime. It's important to do our best to end it, but spending our lives in constant fear and depression over it would be a waste of our lives. Acknowledge the negatives in your life, but you gotta remember to dance how you want whenever you can. The episode ends with the whole gang laughing and kikiing about the whole ordeal at Al's home, but when Al, Earn, and Van head out back to smoke, Darius tells them that he'll be there in a second, and he continues to watch TV. This is important because near the beginning of the episode, Darius mentioned that the way he knows if he's still in the tank or not is if he sees a thick Judge Judy.
Thick Judge Judy. The idea is Judge Judy's always on TV, right? So if I see her and she's thick, I know I'm in the tank.
Interesting.
In typical Atlanta fashion to the bitter end, the episode and the entire series ends with a close-up of Darius watching the TV and slowly cracking a smile at what he sees before it cuts to black, leaving the audience only to speculate about what he saw and if the show that we had spent 4 seasons and 6 years of our lives watching was real or all a dream. And to me, this ending is perfect, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's real or fake. It meant something to Darius, and it meant something to us as the viewer, and those feelings are real, and those feelings matter. But that's how Atlanta ends. One of the funniest, most groundbreaking, and culturally important shows that I've ever seen. It's hard to put into words what this show really means to me. I know that might sound kind of ironic considering I just made 4 40-plus minute videos about it, but even after everything that I've said in these retrospectives, I feel like there's so much more to say. I guess that's another sign of a great piece of art. It gives you things to talk about long after you finish experiencing it. Similar to how I was reluctant to start watching Atlanta in the beginning, I was hesitant to start making this series at first because I wasn't sure that people would respond well to it. Now that the final script has been written and I can reflect on everything that I've done, I gotta say that I'm thankful as hell that I made the decision to start this series. These videos have taken more time and hard work than any videos that I've dropped in the past, but being able to look back on them and see the reception that they received has made it all worth it. All I can say to the people who have been watching and continue to watch is thank you. We all want our perfect endings in life, for big things and for small things. But a lot of times the prospect of not getting that perfect ending deters us from even trying. My message to anyone watching this video is that happiness, pride, and fulfillment are earned more often than they're given. The path to your perfect ending starts with how you choose to find it today. Go out and make the life that you want for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you.